Okay, welcome to session 7. We're going to talk about anxiety. So the previous sessions have really been a framework for thinking about emotions and emotions in our Christian life and recognizing them, so awareness, and then being able to regulate those emotions, and how that might be part of our sanctification, because our emotions are driven by what we believe, and what we believe is, of course, this core to our faith and our growth in holiness, godliness, and becoming more like Jesus. So now we're going to get into the good stuff, which is looking at individual emotions and just understanding them better, so that we can become aware and then also start to be able to regulate. So that's a lot of what we're going to do going forward. And today this morning we're going to talk about first anxiety, but then we're going to also talk about gratitude, and then we're going to talk about anger. Okay, so those are the three things that we're going to cover. So anxiety, just a few things about COVID as a background from the last 3 years, and its impact on people in terms of mental health, which would mostly be around anxiety, but also depression, which we will talk about in coming lecture. So worry or stress, so we use those words, or anxiety, due to COVID, impacted mental health. Of course it did, in over half of adults. Okay, so that's a lot. That any period of time that half of adults would report those kinds of emotions, and 4 in 10 adults reporting symptoms of depression and anxiety. I can't tell you how these numbers work together, but they came from the same source. But it's a lot. Anxiety and depression have increased during COVID, and it makes sense that it would. 60% of adults reported increased alcohol use during the pandemic, and also other use of other substances, and abuse of other substances increased during COVID. The opioid epidemic, which was a national health crisis before COVID, kind of got lost, except that it got worse during COVID. Okay, people trying to cope. Somebody I know said this to me in September of 2020, after an initial wave of hospitalizations, when September came and that wave was returning, she said, "I don't know if I can do this again." Right? The stress on healthcare workers during that time, and the CDC saying that social distancing, while necessary to reduce the spread of COVID-19, can make us feel isolated and lonely, and can increase stress and anxiety. Right? People were afraid to, or not allowed to, leave their homes, and had to be distant. One way of reducing stress is just to touch another human being, right? Hold hands. My wife and I will do that. Just hold hands, and it reduces stress. But here, not my wife and I so much, but people had to be distant, deliberately distant, and not touch, and not to be able to see a person's face. That is a big problem. My daughter teaches first grade, and for the kids not to be able to see her face, and many people, myself included, depend a little bit on seeing someone's mouth to understand them, to hear them, to read them, and I mean these little things create a tremendous amount of stress. Never mind the fear of becoming ill and the uncertainty associated with that. my household had COVID in March 2020. Like, everything shut down and we got sick. We didn't get very sick. But I remember for one moment, just fear, because it was very unknown. But we made it through. And then we had immunity, and then we felt comfortable going out and shopping for people and stuff like that. But it created a lot of anxiety around the world. And anxiety or stress, focusing on that word right now, of course changes things, changes appetite and energy. So these somatic, these body symptoms occur, but also in our minds, changes in our desires and our interests. Those generally would diminish, as we become depressed and anxious. Difficulty concentrating and making decisions. It was a terrible time to make big decisions, especially that first year of COVID. And I remember you have time on your hands, just starting to rethink my whole life. And it's a good exercise. It's part of what has brought me here, changing priorities. But I also knew just don't make any big decisions this year. Difficulty sleeping, nightmares. I know a lot of people now who have what's called nighttime anxiety, and increase of substances, including maybe abuse of substances. Okay, so stress makes everything worse. Okay. Maybe we can take a look at this right now. There is a way, this has been around for quite a while, there is a way of maybe measuring the amount of stress in your life, and maybe you could take a look at it, and if you look at these items, which you can't read off the screen here, but I'll highlight some of them, and I'd like to hear from you in the last year. What are some of the things that have been particular stressors for you? So I'll point out, I last presented this a couple weeks ago to a seniors group that meets at my church, and we talked about anxiety and gratitude. And by the way, most of the people in the group don't go to church, or they don't really have a close relationship with Jesus. They don't read their Bible. And this is a great topic to present in the community, is to talk about stress and how to handle it, and including gratitude as a way of dealing with it. So I highlighted things that seniors may be more concerned with. But for example, the top item is death of a spouse, and then the number 2 is a divorce. And so the points are given. Now, this has been around a while and has been scientifically studied and analyzed, and so these points are going to give a stress index and relate to health outcomes over the following 2 years. So depending about the amount of stress you've had in the last year, how does that change health outcomes for you in the next 2 years? So death of a spouse and divorce, death of a close family member, and major injury or illness. So these would be some of the high stressors. Death of a close friend or change in a work experience, interestingly, are about equally stressful. Change in residence or working conditions, a major change in social activities, and that would have been brought on, of course, by COVID isolation and family get-togethers. Not able to do that. A year ago, all of the holiday get-togethers that we had planned were canceled. Give us more free time than we usually have, which I like, but it was stressful. The whole dealing with that was stressful, and then not seeing people and holidays themselves. So what were some of the stressors that you experienced in the last year?
I had circled major change in the health or behavior of a family member.
Yeah.
My wife's mother almost died of COVID, so that was really very stressful.
Yeah, very stressful. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else that occurred? You might notice some of these things are good things. I changed jobs. I got a better job, but that's stressful. Or I moved, I made a move that I wanted to move. Some friends of ours this week are moving from New Jersey to Dallas. Very stressful, but very positive. They can be with their daughter.
Mine had to do with work more, major business readjustment, major change in working conditions.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, as these could be compounded as multiple, multiple things happen. Okay. Anybody else want to share something or?
Change in residence.
Yeah.
4.
4 changes in residence. Okay, so you add them up. Whatever the number is, change in residence. 20 times 4. Okay, you're already at 80.
Do we get?
Watch out.
Do we get to count the holidays multiple times too?
And add, well, if you're
everyone.
Actually, how do you handle that? Of course, the holidays happen. I don't know how to, Veterans Day, I don't know if that counts. Okay.
One question, some things, for example, number 28 and 32, some are kind of similar, like major change in life, a living condition, and change in residence, or change in a new school.
Yeah.
So would you only choose one of them? Two?
Living conditions is probably more general and something other than, change in residence. Maybe, I don't know, maybe people in the household or something like that. Actually, I don't know the detail. So what's important is the cumulative nature of stress. And so these scores are developed, and the target is how does that affect your health over the next 2 years? And if your cumulative amount is less than 150 points, it really doesn't. But if it's more than 300 points, then that increases your chance of a major health issue, stress-related health issue, which is maybe everything. Cardiovascular issue, or a brain issue, or cancer, or and the reason is that stress harms the immune system and makes you more susceptible to disease, and as a result, that cumulatively these stressors on top of each other could weaken you enough that you would be more susceptible to health issue. So it's did anybody, and if you looked at it closely enough, did anybody in the room approach 300 points? Okay.
I did.
You did. Okay. So what to do, right? Is just to keep, and some of those things would be good things, probably. Moving here to do this program, but nonetheless, it's stressful. And the thing to do is to keep an eye on that. Some of these are imposed upon us. Some of them we might choose. But there are activities that we can do to reduce stress. So these are mostly the stressors, but I can exercise more. I can make sure I'm eating well. I can make sure I'm having good relationships and spending time with people. Spending time with for myself, and activities that will counter some of these factors, just to reduce the stress in my life. Maybe I don't take on something new after I've already accumulated 300 points, okay, over the next over the next couple of years. Right? When I presented this a couple weeks ago, there was a woman in the back and said, you know what, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago I had this very stressful year, and the year later I had this major health issue. And so it made perfect sense to her. So it's a way of, I guess, assessing now what risk there is and what might happen in the future. So not a bad thing to be thinking about, right? We might assume we can handle anything, and it's fact is we can't. So stress. So now we're going to kind of implement a methodology that I use in dealing with emotions. That if somebody has, if anxiety is the issue, the first thing is to recognize that and understand, well, what is anxiety? And then look for a way to intervene and reduce it, okay? So you're going to see that the next few slides, the things I'm going to do again and again for different emotions, including positive emotions. So we'll be talking about negative emotions like anxiety, fear, anger, but also positive emotions like joy and peace. If I want more peace, how do I get, what is peace? And clinically, what is peace? What does it feel like? And what are the thoughts associated with it? That's an emotion, right? Is what's happening in my body and what's happening in my head, my mind. And then if I understand what it is, can I get more of it? How do I get more of it? Okay? So when we're talking about anxiety, I think that it's important to build a vocabulary. If you're going to understand something, just building a vocabulary around it. And so we use the word anxiety, we use the word worry. I'm worried, I'm stressed, I'm anxious. But there are a lot of other words. What if I'm just a little bit anxious? Or what if I'm a lot anxious? What are those words? Okay, so why don't we think about that? What are some other words for anxiety?
Could you say like turmoil?
Turmoil, okay.
Nervous.
Nervous, yeah, we use that a lot.
I just wanted to say that.
Turmoil. So, what other words?
Troubled?
Tensed. Tension.
Tense. Yeah.
Concerned?
Oh, say that again.
Concerned?
Concerned.
Yeah.
Concerned. Yeah. Okay.
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. So that would be on the high end. Yeah. Yeah. What's the German word for anxiety?
Angst.
Angst. Okay. Angst. We use that word also, right? So, okay. So let's see. I'm sure I got some over here. So on the low end, I'm feeling a little uneasy. Maybe I feel vulnerable and apprehensive. That's a good word. I feel apprehensive. I'm worried. I'm tense. I'm nervous. And some of these words point more to the body, right? Tense, because I'm feeling tension. I'm nervous. I feel threatened or scared or on edge. I feel trapped and panicky. And becoming frantic, overwhelmed, and paralyzed, maybe literally paralyzed. I had a friend who the stress at work was so great, and every time the phone rang, it was another problem he had to deal with, and then the phone rings, and he can see it's his boss, and he can't move his arm to pick up the phone. And so his arm was paralyzed. But when your arm gets paralyzed, the nerves run along the arm. So when there's a nerve, a physical nerve problem, it's like the part of the arm, right? Like with a stroke or something. It's not, a chunk, right? So that was a mental issue. His brain said, you are not going to pick up that phone again. That's right. Right. So what makes you anxious?
Upcoming trips back and from countries.
Yeah.
Especially to Peru.
Okay, so planned travel, which is probably positive mostly, or there's a good reason to do it, and you're looking forward to it. But also, yeah, I get that. I know somebody who, I don't know how many countries she's been to. I don't know, 50, 60, 70 countries. Travels a lot internationally, but she says the airport I am just nervous in the airport. And she's probably been in an airport 200 times. And it still creates anxiety for her, especially, in the last, since 9/11. And okay, so upcoming trips that make you anxious?
Uncertainty. Sorry, uncertainty.
Uncertainty. So I don't know what's going to happen next. That makes me anxious. Yeah, that would be a major producer of anxiety.
Can it also be routine? Like for me, I'm more anxious if I know that there will be no changes in the next years. Like the opposite.
Okay, so if you see no changes,
Yeah. Like
then
routine.
that makes you anxious. Why does that make you anxious, do you think?
I don't know. Just like changes.
Okay, you like change. Okay, yeah, I like change too. Yeah, I like variety. So when you don't foresee things changing, that creates what word here would fit for you?
Maybe nervous.
Nervous.
Restless.
So something in the middle. Go to the lower half, top of the yeah.
Restless.
Restless. Oh, okay. Maybe there's a restlessness to that. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good word. And this is a reason why to develop a vocabulary. Like I'm nervous. Okay, well, what do you mean by that? Then you think, well, I just feel restless. That gives a different picture than vulnerable, or so to develop a vocabulary. So what you. So anxiety is different than other emotions in that some anxiety is good, okay, or at least good in the sense of performance. If you had zero anxiety, then you'd be dead, I suppose. I mean, you because a certain amount helps growth. Right? Some plants need stress, need to dry out, and to the point of almost being a problem in order to grow. Right? And so a little bit of anxiety it produces better performance. Right? And so maybe anticipation. Or butterflies. So I don't know. I guess if you're going up to bat and having a little bit of tension there can improve performance, and we'll talk about why that might happen. Well, here, so a little bit of anxiety might increase focus. You get a little bit of tunnel vision, and if you're gonna it's never that good at baseball, but it's hard to hit a baseball. But if you focus, and if you're a pro, it's coming at you maybe at 100 miles an hour, and you have to, and it takes a quarter of a second to get to you, and you have to see which way it's spinning. Like, how do you do that? You have to be super focused and alert. So a little bit of anxiety can increase energy to your muscles and focus, and that could increase performance. And a lot of us intentionally induce anxiety by taking in some chemical called caffeine, a stimulant, every morning, right? Or 2 cups, and it just gives us a little more focus, right? There we go. So we intentionally induce anxiety, right? Like 3 or 4 people have picked up their coffee cup. And then this sense of challenge, right? This sense of challenge. So that might bring a kind of a peak performance. Okay, and we're intentionally inducing anxiety. But I notice that, if I go out to breakfast with somebody, I drink too much coffee. And then I'm over the peak, right? Just 1 or 2 cups, that's good for me. If it's 3 or 4, I've gone past the peak, and now I'm not feeling well, as well. I mean, it's not a big problem, but or it might cause the jitters. If I'm already nervous about something, adding coffee to it is not a good idea. It puts me over, right? So then, too much anxiety, performance declines, right? And it may turn into more than just jitters, but fear or panic, or we talked about like paralyzed, right? So that's the nature of anxiety. It can go, we want a little bit, but then it can go too far, right? And anxiety comes from, or one source of anxiety is a sense of danger or a threat. Now, we talked about the brain. As smart as we are, right? Again, the brain isn't always good at distinguishing between truth and falsehood, and a real or perceived, by that I mean it's not real, but we see it that way, could create the same anxiety. So if I just stood here and started imagining that men with guns are going to come through that door, okay, and I can feel something, right? And I know the probability of that is really, really low, although maybe higher in Texas than in New Jersey, but really, really low, okay? So, but it made me feel, my arms tingled in an unpleasant way just saying that out loud, right? My brain should be saying, okay, this is just made up, but it didn't. Okay. So now here we're going to do awareness. Okay, like what is anxiety? Okay, it's an emotion, so we know that it has there are bodily sensations associated with it, and there's something going on in my head. Okay, so what does anxiety feel like? It will be different for everybody. What the actual sensation is and where it happens in your body. And so you want to know this about yourself. Where is it that it shows up, and what does it feel like? Because anxiety, this is something that our minds have developed to, at some level, to protect us. It's an alarm going off in our bodies, right? So when you hear an alarm go off, your smoke alarm battery is wearing out, and maybe it's malfunctioning, and for some reason it goes off. I mean, it's alarming, right? It gets your attention, and it forces you to do something. Right? So anxiety is an alarm going off in our bodies, and we should pay attention to it. But some people, maybe most of us, live with a certain level of anxiety so that it just seems like it's normal, and I don't even notice it anymore, right? So if there's a noise, like probably in this church, there is a freeway out there, and yesterday when I was looking for things to listen to, I heard it. That's the first time I heard it. Right? And I imagine if you're here, you never hear that. You never hear it. It's just part of the environment, and that can be true for many people. Is you can see, wow, it's a very anxious person, but they do not think of themselves as anxious. But it's an alarm. It's meant to be an alarm to get your attention. So we have to know what does my alarm sound like? Okay, so let's start with the body. What does anxiety feel like? Okay. What does it feel like?
Perhaps knots in the stomach.
Okay, a knot in the stomach. Okay, that's a description people use. Okay, some kind of like knot in your stomach. What does a knot in your stomach feel like?
Tension.
Tension? Okay, so muscle tension? So I guess muscles in the stomach are tense, okay? So I don't know, we could probably create that. If this it's unpleasant, right? It's an unpleasant feeling of tension in your stomach. So some people will feel, so that when that happens, when I notice that happening, now unless it's always that way, and then my assumption is you all feel this way too all the time. It's just, but it's not true, right? I don't usually feel that. Okay, that's one. Okay, muscle tension in where? In the stomach, okay? So muscle tension could be somewhere else too. Where else can it be?
Sometimes tightness in the chest.
Your chest? Maybe Steve can validate what I'm about to say. Maybe the word most is not correct, but many supposed heart attack victims show up in an emergency room, and it's not a heart attack, it's a panic attack. Do you ever see that in an emergency room?
Yes.
Yeah. Is the word most correct or just many?
Some.
Some. Okay, some. Let's say some.
Emergency department's skewed.
Okay.
Family practice clinic.
Okay, gotcha. So, because there's tension in the chest, and you wonder, am I having a heart attack, right? And in fact, the ironic thing there, I guess, is the fact that you're feeling that your body is reacting that way to a danger means your body is doing what it's supposed to do. It's healthy. The fact that your body's doing that, but it may feel that way. People think, I think I'm having a heart attack, right? Tension in the chest. Tension where else? Muscle.
Back
Okay.
and shoulders.
Yeah, your shoulders, your neck, your lower back. Lower back, chronic back pain for some people is more about stress than a physical injury for many people. Okay.
I've met people who've had paralyzed faces, palsy, because of stressful
Okay.
situations.
Okay. Wow. Okay, that's yeah. So nerve related, right? So that's tension. What else other than tension could be symptoms of stress, bodily symptoms?
Twitching eye.
Okay, maybe that's related to what you said. So in the face, nerves doing things. Yeah, maybe an eye twitching. We may call it a nervous tick.
Maybe in general a weakened immune system. Like you get sick
Yes.
very easily.
Yes, so maybe chronic illness would be part of that. And again, that can affect lots of things, respiratory issues, and asthma, and lots of things. Yeah.
Shortness of breath or like an inability to breathe.
Yes. Yeah. And when I breathe in a shallow way, then so I'm not fully exhaling, and so what's in my lungs is carbon dioxide, and I'm just breathing in a little bit of oxygen, and I this shortness of breath, and my brain is saying we don't have enough oxygen up here or anywhere, and we're going to die, and then our body reacts more, and we head towards a panic attack, right?
What you'll see is in medicine is they'll hyperventilate, so their respiratory rate either gets faster or they breathe more deeply. It blows off your calcium, which shifts in the ions in your bloodstream. When you breathe deeply, it raises your pH, so it shifts your calcium to attach it to the protein.
which then makes the body think that you don't have as much calcium, free calcium, which makes you have numbness around the lips,
Okay.
carpopedal spasm, and you can pass out.
Okay. Okay. That's an elaborate path, but caused by stress and your breathing not being adequate, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Could a symptom of anxiety be overexhaustion or always feeling tired or?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. It takes a lot of energy to be stressed, and brain energy too, to be stressed. Yeah. So let's see. So I had sweaty hands, or maybe perspiring generally, right? Maybe as your body's trying to cool itself, and headaches, lightheadedness, and that it probably has something to do with the oxygen, and may lead to passing out. We talked about muscle tension and flushing, and difficulty breathing, a racing heart, feeling that my heart is beating fast, and I might have this sense of, physically, this sense of I'm about to, I'm having a heart attack, I'm going to die, right? Let's go to the mental symptoms, okay? So this is about, so that's what may happen in my body. In my body, when I feel stress, I usually feel like tingling in my arms. Now, maybe just a little bit. Sometimes when I speak publicly, I feel anxious, and sometimes I don't feel anxious, and I don't know why. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. I don't know why. So I've just come to, and if I do, it doesn't seem to affect things, so I just ignore it, and eventually it goes away. But it'd be a tingling in my arms. When it's bad, it feels like electricity is running up one arm and down the other. Right? So that's how I experience it. But there are, as an emotion, then there's something creating those bodily symptoms, and so those are thoughts. And what is happening in my mind? So my thoughts, my heart may be racing, my thoughts may be racing. Okay, the thoughts are moving fast, and it's hard. It feels overwhelming. Maybe I feel like I'm going to lose control. The one time that I had a panic attack, or this, I think a mild panic attack, I was at work at my desk. There were things that needed to be done. There was always things that needed to be done, but for some reason I was having this kind of mild panic attack, but I was also conscious of it, and at one level observing it, and my thoughts were, I'm going to run out of my office and down the hallway, and just lose control of myself like a crazy person, right? That's what I thought would happen. I thought that's a real possibility. And it didn't happen, but it just felt like a real possibility. I know why I had that panic attack, because a couple days later, somebody called me and asked for help with panic attacks. So God just gave me one, so I knew a little bit more directly about it. Right? And that has happened to me, particularly early in my counseling career. And so I eventually came to learn when something odd happened to me. I was like, okay, I guess I need this. So that's something to look forward to. But so in these thoughts, but fundamentally, an anxious thought or a worry has these characteristics, right? It's futuristic and catastrophic. Something bad is going to happen tomorrow. Something bad is going to happen. Right? And it might be very specific, or it could be very general. But something bad is going to happen. So it might start with, well, what if, what if, this happened at the end of the week, or when I make that trip, what if the plane has problems and I don't make it there or something, what if? And it could be something, that is a real likely concern, or what if I don't have the money at the end of the month to pay bills? Right? That happens to people all the time, and plane crashes don't happen very often. But what if, and ending with an imagined disaster, okay? So those are the thoughts that trigger the cortisol and the adrenaline that create the bodily symptoms, okay? Because I need to get ready for a disaster. Okay? Now, if I'm doing that every day or all day, that will create real health problems over time, because this is designed to meet danger. The body is designed to work this way, and it's good for us if it's occasional and it's real. But if it's all the time, and this is how I'm thinking, and this is how my body is feeling all the time, you can see how that would create health problems, mental health and physical health problems, and problems in your life, and all the time. Okay, so how do you deal with it? So now we know what is it. What is anxiety? And hopefully this alarm that goes off, I become familiar with it. Okay, if I'm getting this tingling, if I start to feel a tingling in my arms, and maybe it's going up one arm and down the other, if I start to feel that, I should be aware, it's time to intervene and to do something. But what is it I should do? Well, there are lots of things you could do, and you should pick a favorite one. And maybe an emergency, like a rescue, something to do. And maybe something I need to do in my life, change my lifestyle, just to counter the stresses. Whether today's a stressful day or not, I should have habits that help reduce stress, right? That prepare me better for stress, my body and my mind, right? I think when somebody is very anxious, I think you need to treat the body first. Need to relax the body first, because the mind just is paying attention to the body so much that first relax the body and then address the thoughts. Okay. So I think that's important with treatment. So what can we do? So dealing with the body, breathing. I really should know how to breathe in order to, let's say in an acute situation, right? To counter or prevent what Steve just described, that cascade of physical things that could, I'm going to pass out. I have felt that way sometimes, like I think I'm going to faint, but you've gotten pretty far, and I'd like to not get that far, right? So if I can recognize it early on, then let me breathe. And the idea is to empty your lungs of what's in there now, carbon dioxide, and fill it with air or with oxygen. And to fill your lungs, empty your lungs, and fill your lungs. And so you might hear of a number of ways this can be done, but this is one. It's 4 seconds. So exhale for 4 seconds on a count of 4. So I'm gonna. That's a pretty long exhale. And so I'm going to try to empty my lungs, and then I'm going to inhale on a count of 4. I want to inhale with my nose. Really fills your lungs. And I'm going to hold it for a count of 4. Okay. Standing up here and you do this, you could get a little dizzy maybe, but sit down and relax your body, and then you do this. Exhale on 4 out of my mouth. And in fact, it's even better. It's a pressured exhale, and if it depends on where you are, you may not want to make noise. But this is something you could do I could do standing here, and you may not notice. And I have actually this week, and you may not have noticed. But after I dealt with Alan like that,
I wish I
we're okay. We're okay, right? Okay, so anyway, like an exhale on a count of 4, and the count of 4 is slow, and it maximizes the oxygen in your body. That's what they say. Okay, and you may hear this different ways, but the idea is to really exhale slowly, and to inhale slowly, hold it, and this does a couple of things. Is it improves the breathing and the oxygen. And the oxygen is good for the brain and the rest of the body. And when the brain sees that, okay, it looks like we have enough oxygen here, I think we can shut the adrenaline off, and then you start moving away from the alarm starts going off, right? Or starts stopping, I'd say. So the breathing, and that's something you do anywhere generally. Or muscle relaxation. Especially, let's say if you had tension in your gut, relaxing those muscles, which might mean deliberately, if you feel tense, like deliberately making it tense, and then relaxing it. Okay? And then repeating that wherever you feel the muscle tension. So in your shoulders, like deliberately make it tense, and then relax it. And you might need to do that for a while. I like the breathing. I use it a lot, but if I'm very stressed, it might take 10 minutes. Okay. An advantage of what I've described so far is that it's not just treating the body, but if I'm counting to 4, then I'm distracting I'm counting. And that distracts my mind from whatever I'm worrying about too, right? So it helps both the mind and the body. So I know these things, and I don't. I shouldn't say I don't get stressed, but so I recognize it, and in breathing, and I try to intervene early, and so it doesn't get out of hand. But I know these things, so. Several years ago, I was in Egypt, and with my brother, and he was teaching a class, and I just joined him, and I gave a lecture on empathy and listening, the one I gave you, and we went to the pyramids, and you can go into the pyramids. Okay, you should go into the pyramids, and I did it once, and I will never do that again. But it's you have to walk up, crouch down, and it's claustrophobic. And I'm not very claustrophobic, but I didn't like that. It's hot. And so I'm going up, and at some point I realized, I need to breathe because it's hot, and just make sure I'm breathing. But somebody's coming down, and they're starting to panic. And you just got to keep moving. There's people behind you, in front of you, and count, breathe and count, and trying to give some instructions. Okay. But I've had MRIs a few times, and I'm pretty good. In an MRI, it's very closed in, and I just don't open your eyes. Just don't open your eyes, and I can usually relax. But the last time I did. After, several minutes, I thought, I'm not going to be able to hold this. For some reason, I was getting anxious. I'm not going to be able to hold this. So, okay, count. Count from 100, backwards by 3s. Okay. And that takes a little bit of time. Okay, now I need something else. Okay, count to 500 by 17s, and then this is a little bit hard to do. 17, 34, 51, and then you have to really think about it. And within seconds, my anxiety disappeared. when my daughter was little, so I have 3 kids, 2 sons, and then the daughter in the middle, she loved to go on rides. No, none of the rest of us loved that. But I can do spinning things. I can't do roller coasters. So okay, I'll go on the some spinning thing with you, tilt-a-whirl, or you spin like this, and that's, you do this, and you tilt, and I can do that. I don't like it, but I can do it. So for some reason we got on, and she's spinning, and this is before I got involved with counseling. So this is more than 20 years ago. She's a little girl, and for some reason in the middle of it, I said, "Allie, let's do timetables. What's 6 times 4? And 24. What's 5 times 3?" I guess we were studying timetables. And I noticed my anxiety reduced. So I don't know why I came up with that, but I noticed my anxiety reduced immediately, right? And so there's a good reason for this. Okay. Let's just talk about the mind and how to treat it. So I gave you a few ideas, but the basic ideas are to distract yourself. Okay, so we're talking about how to handle these futuristic and catastrophic racing thoughts. And it's very hard to control this. Right? It's very hard to pull yourself back when you're in that state, which is why you want to catch it early. But distract to a cognitive activity, and that counting backwards moves the activity. You remember our model of the brain, our fist model of the brain. So when you're anxious, the midbrain, the limbic system is on fire. If you were to look at it, take a picture of it, you'd see this is bright orange. It's the energy is all here, and you want to douse that fire. And so do something to force yourself to use the cortex, the front of the brain. So if I know what's going on, if I'm aware, I can force myself to do times tables or count backwards from 100 by 3s. I can force myself to do that. It moves the energy to the front of the brain, away from the middle of the brain, and you can calm down. Okay, distract to a cognitive activity. I don't think at this point doing a crossword puzzle would work. But doing something to involve the front of your brain that you can force happen, right? Or with physical, on the physical side, it may be distracting to some movement. I got to get up and move around and release this tension. Okay. Or relax. If once I get control of that, a certain amount of control of that. So let me just sit down comfortably and just try to visualize something calm. Now that's a good activity when you're not stressed, and it'd be good to get good at these things when you're not stressed, so that when you do get stressed, you know how to breathe. Or you know how to visualize, or you know how to deal with tension in the body, right? And so after our break, we're going to talk more about the specific thoughts. And so this is how we're going to approach emotions. We're going to ask clinically, what is anxiety? Okay, and here we have it, right? And then what does the Bible say about anxiety? And we're going to see that Paul and Jesus have lots of good things to say, and there's other parts of the Bible as well. Okay? We'll do that when we come back.